Hello and welcome to Leveling the Playing Field. I'm Angela Morabito with the Defense of Freedom Institute, and today Riley Gaines is here to share her very personal story of why it is so important to protect women's sports. Riley is an alumna of the University of Kentucky, where she was a 12-time All-American swimmer. Riley, thank you for being here.
Of course, thank you so much for having me.
Well, it's great to be with you, and I would love to hear a little bit more in depth about your story. How did you first learn that you would be expected to compete against biological men?
Well, so it was actually my senior year at the University of Kentucky last year. I had made it my goal to win a national championship, which I knew was something that I was capable of doing. And about the middle of our season, so about November of 2021, all of a sudden, I was ranked third in the country. But the person who was ranked first was someone I had never heard of before. There was a couple red flags, one of which being this was a senior. Two, this was someone from University of Pennsylvania, which is not historically a fast swimming school. Three, this person was ranked at the top in the 100 freestyle and everything in between to the mile. So the sprint event and long distance, which think of running, your best sprinters aren't your best marathon runners. So there's a lot of red flags, but never once did it occur to me that this could be a biological man until, of course, it was disclosed that this was a man. And this was the first time that I became aware of a swimmer named Leah Thomas. And so I saw who Leah was. And once I figured out that Leah was formerly Will and swam 3 years on the men's side at University of Pennsylvania, I was able to look up who Will was. And I saw that this was a male swimmer who, at best in the nation, ranked 462nd. And so clearly that proved this was not a lateral movement. I thought surely the NCAA would see it exactly how I did, which was nothing opinionated about it, the sheer facts of it. But that's not how the NCAA saw it. About 3 weeks before NCAA championships in March of 2022, the NCAA announced that Leah would in fact be competing with the women.
So what does that feel like from the athlete's perspective when you have to line up on that starting block and you know the person a lane or two down for you has a tremendous biological advantage from being born in a male body?
It just feels like you're going into the race with your hands tied behind your back. It's truthfully, I was kind of curious how I would feel because you never know until you're there. I thought I was going to be mad, but really how I felt was like heartbreak. I knew how much work I had put into my sport. I started swimming at the age of 4. So 18 years, I dedicated my entire life to excelling in swimming. But knowing you have to compete against a biological man, a mediocre man at best, who now is leading the nation, and no one was willing to acknowledge that. It just seemed as if everyone was willing to turn a blind eye to the damage that was being done to the women's sporting category. With us as female athletes, we were the collateral damage in the process, but no one seemed to care. They would rather be seen as kind and inclusive and accepting and welcoming and all of the things. But in reality, it wasn't kind and it wasn't inclusive to allow Leah Thomas to swim with us. It was actually the exact opposite. This was exclusive. We were excluding female athletes from the podium and from scholarships and the opportunities to affirm the identity and the feelings of a biological male.
You'll put tremendous amounts of work into your sport, and what it takes just to get to that championship meet is incredible. What did your teammates have to say about this?
My teammates, so at the University of Kentucky, there was 40 girls on the team. And 38 of the girls on my team share the exact same opinions that I have. They were just scared to say it publicly, whereas I'm someone who I wasn't willing to lie anymore, because what was happening was we were lying to ourselves. We were lying to this next future generation of female athletes to deny the differences between man and woman. I mean, it's common sense. It's like denying the sky is blue. We know that men and women are different, and we know that men are, on average, are taller, stronger, faster, more powerful than women. And that's not to say that women aren't capable of amazing things and strong in their own ways, but we're different. And we deserve to be celebrated and recognized on our unique differences and our physical ceilings. But that's not what was happening. And it felt like to me this was going against everything that Title IX was created to protect. Of course, Title IX was supposed to stop discrimination on the basis of sex, but what we were dealing with was discrimination on the basis of sex. And so I was no longer willing to not stand in the truth and really, quite frankly, science and common sense.
You raise a great point there. And speaking of Title IX, as you well know, President Biden is working on a Title IX rewrite and then a separate planned new athletics rule that is expected to force schools to allow biological men in women's sports, to take the NCAA policy you faced and make it universal throughout higher education. What would your message be to the Biden administration as they prepare to rob young women of these opportunities?
They want to look at this as if it's progressive, it's progress, we're moving forward. But how can they not see that this is not progress? This is taking us back half a century. This is taking us back, this year will be the 51st anniversary of Title IX. So this is taking us back 51 years to before women had the opportunity for athletic success and athletic chances. So this is not moving in the forward direction. This is so harmful to the women. Notice how every instance we've been talking about with transgender athletes competing in sports, it's been biological males competing with the women. Why are we not seeing an influx of biological women competing with the men? And I can answer that for you. It's because these women know they could not be successful, especially at the collegiate level, when competing against men. And I think it's really important to add, at that same NCAA championships where we had Leah Thomas, who was, of course, a male to female transitioner, we had another swimmer swimming with the women who was a biological female, but transitioning to a male, and was formerly named Izzy, but now goes by Isaac, fully identifies as he, him, had a double mastectomy and swam only in a Speedo, but of course was swimming with the women. So if we were basing this off of gender identity, then why did we have someone who fully identified as a male swimming with the women? And like I just said, it's because Izzy, now Isaac, could have never, ever remotely even gotten close to qualifying for the men's NCAA championships.
It boggles the mind. And of course, we want to be respectful to all people, no matter who they are or what their self-image is. But choosing to be a woman whenever it's convenient boggles the mind. And I'd love to get your take, Riley, on what this does to the next generation, because swimming has been such a huge part of your life and the lives of your former teammates. What do you think this does to the next generation of girls, knowing that from the time they're in kindergarten, they may have to compete against biological boys, and if they say anything about it, they get all kinds of crazy pushback?
I've heard stories from parents all over the US who are dealing with this right now with their middle school age, elementary school age daughters. I just talked to a parent from Texas, and she called me and said, my daughter has 7 biological men on her basketball team, her middle school basketball team. And I said, oh, well, I'm not, I have nothing against co-ed teams. If the team is supposed to be co-ed, she said, no, it's not a co-ed team. The starting 5 of my daughter's middle school basketball team, girls basketball team, is all men. And it's discouraging these girls from playing. Girls are not willing to put themselves in an arena where they're changing in front of a male, where they have to worry about injury. That's a really big piece of it. In sports where you have to worry about physical contact, no girl wants to go up against a guy. We've known this ever since we were little kids. I have a younger brother, even him being younger than me. I wouldn't want to get in a fight with him even when we were young. And so these girls, they don't want to have to worry about their injuries and their safety. They, of course, don't want to have to worry about their privacy in the dressing room, and they don't want to have to worry about losing out on opportunities. And so to avoid that, they avoid playing at all, which is heartbreaking. And like I said, I've heard this from parents all over the country who have called me and said, my daughter doesn't want to play sports because she sees what's happening and she's not willing to put herself in that position.
It's so sad that kids are having to make that decision so young, to give up on something that's fun, that they love to do, because the adults in charge can't act like adults. And what more question, Riley, while you're here, what do you think principals, school leaders, teachers, coaches, What is their role to play in this situation when you have the federal government getting ready to regulate and to kind of blow up women's sports? What do the adults in the room owe to their student athletes?
Their role is to protect them. That is something that I have seen these people in these authoritative roles, whether it be a coach, whether it be someone within the NCAA, someone with political power, even parents. It's their job to protect their daughters. I've gotten so much feedback of people saying, "Oh, well, why don't you just boycott? Why don't you just get up there and not swim?" A lot of these people don't realize that when you sign a scholarship, your school owns you essentially. You don't really get the option to not swim or not race or not run. In theory, it's fantastic, but we shouldn't have to sacrifice everything that we've worked for to make changes. And I know that you do have to sacrifice things to make changes, and I understand that. But why aren't we holding the coaches accountable? Why aren't they talking? And from my experience, I've talked to so many coaches, so many athletic directors, who have all told me, "Hey, I agree with you, but I can't say so publicly because I don't want to be sued. I do fear retaliation." And so they know what's right. They know that men and women are different, especially if they're in the arena of coaching. They see the differences between men and women, but they're not willing to stand up to, or stand up for the truth and stand up for their athletes. It's crucial that they do. That's how changes are going to be made. We need people in these authoritative positions to use their voices to protect us, because it's a lot harder for us. Being me at the time when I spoke out, I was 21, but there are so many younger girls who don't feel comfortable using their voices, and that's why we need the parents and the coaches to use theirs for us.
Well, Riley, we are certainly grateful for you using your voice to stand up to protect women's sports. Thank you for all you do and for being here with us today.
Of course, and thank you for what you do.